Welcome to another episode of the Terrific Tips for Business. I, of course, am Terry Watkins, your terrific host of the day. And I am so thankful that you are here with us for another action-packed conversation with an amazing entrepreneur, businesswoman, sharing some really important tips with us. That's what I love about this show is we always talk about things that help us improve our business, our lives, every day. And so today I have the honor and privilege of speaking with the one, the only, Linda Fostek. And I can't wait to share her with you. So she is an international speaker, and she is actually known as the crisis planner. Her radio show is Get Off the Worry Go Round. Isn't that fun? It's just fun. She's also a best-selling author, a life coach, and consultant to facilitate recovery and avoid family conflicts, and control chaos when facing personal and natural disasters, hence the crisis planner. We love this. This is awesome. She carries on her late father's legacy through her books, And Now What? Shit Happens, Password Passport, and the Crisis Planner Home System. She's an avid author, guys. Now you know why she's here, right? We talk all the time about challenges that we're facing in our life and our business, and Linda's here to help us get that all organized. Named in 2017 Networker of the Year by 516 631 ads. I'm not familiar with 516 631 ads, so I'm sure there's an interesting story behind that. She was profiled in the LinkedIn Business News, the Who's Who of 2018 Business Services, and Who's Who Visionary within their business. And she was also honored as the New York Power Woman by the Long Island Press and Queens Currier. What an amazing, amazing set of accomplishments. I'm so thankful to have her here. She's also the co-leader of the Nassau and Suffolk chapters of Women's Prosperity Network. She's a certified speaker, member of the One Philosophy Founders Circle, Awakening Giants Mission for Global Transformation, Pulse, Orion, and ACP. She's a founding board member of the Caregivers Resource Network, board member of LINAIPC, which I'm not familiar with those letters stand for, but I'm sure she'll tell us, and a member of the Suffolk County CERT, Community Emergency Response Team. Creator of the Science Labs and Learning Platform for young children to cultivate imagination, creativity, and problem-solving skills to make the world a better place now and in the future. Linda has appeared on numerous TV, radio, and podcasts locally and nationally, and has appeared on stages in India, England, and Cuba. She's currently the host of the Linda Fostek Show, Get Off the Worry Go Round, on Bold Brave Media. And I was a guest of that show not that long ago. So she's going to share her contact information with you as we get into the conversation. But without further ado, Linda, thanks for joining us today.
It's so great to be here today.
It's so great to have you. That background is beautiful, by the way.
Yeah, well, we've got a significant amount of snow up here in New York right now, so I thought a snowy background would be appropriate.
Let's all of us Southerners see the snow that we don't get to see when we look out our window.
I don't know. They're saying North Carolina is due for some snow this weekend.
Are they really? I'm just going to hide in my house. It's okay. It's been so cold. I've pretty much been hiding in the house. Not going to lie. It's totally true. Linda, it seems like you have been so accomplished as a writer, as a businesswoman. You've just done so many things. How did you end up as known as the crisis planner? Like, when did that start?
Well, it's really interesting because I spent 35 years in corporate America in sales, working in grocery sales and pharmaceutical sales. And, that was my background, but it was never in my heart. And what I find interesting is there's a thread that has gone through my entire life. My father was an engineer, and if I had a problem or a complaint about something, he never let me just complain. He said, so what are you going to do about it? And
Such a good question.
he made me think through a solution. Now, when I would think through a solution and I bring it to him, it wasn't necessarily the right solution, but the fact that I went through the process of thinking about how to fix it, then we negotiated and we came out with something that worked for both of us. So I've always been problem solution oriented. And in fact, one of the jobs I had early on in my career, I lived on a tiny little island in the middle of the Pacific called Kwajalein. And when I say tiny, it was 1.2 square miles, a dot in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The highest elevation was 6 feet out of the water. And when
I was going to say that small, you're lucky you didn't get swallowed up by a wave.
well, we had a typhoon.
Oh
And
no.
there were 15-foot waves breaking on the breakwater in front of my trailer. And I had to go to work that day because my job on that island was I was manning the trouble desk. And that was like the precursor to 911. So anybody who was having an emergency was calling into the trouble desk. So I I waded through knee-deep water, dodging coconuts, walked a quarter mile to my office, and the phone is ringing off the hook. My trailer's being washed out to sea. My outlets are sparking. A coconut tree fell on my trailer. All this stuff is happening because it's the middle of a typhoon, right? And I'm like, okay, pull the main breaker and get to higher ground. Pull the main breaker. That's all I could tell them because nobody was coming to help them because we didn't have the resources, and it took us completely by surprise.
Oh my
In the
gosh.
middle of all this, somebody calls up and tells me their typewriter is broken. And I was like, excuse me? Do you see what's going on out there? Do you think you could call back tomorrow? I don't think the typewriter repairman is coming out today. But I kind of learned how to triage disaster. It was like, okay, they have a plumbing problem. I sent the plumber out. If they had an I mean, whatever the problem was, that was what I was doing. So
Isn't that what we do though? We learn to triage disasters, or we learn to triage to avoid the fires so
right.
that there aren't fires, right? So that's
And then
really interesting.
you prioritize your triage. It's like, okay, what's the most critical thing? You take care of that first, and then you take care of the next thing. So the typewriter was pretty low on the list. Okay.
That particular day. Yeah.
And so, and I was a Girl Scout growing up. So problem solving has been part of my career. And I think it made me a more valued employee because instead of whining and complaining when things weren't working, I would always present a different way of doing it. Whether they listened to me or not, they valued my opinion because I was thinking about how we could fix something that wasn't working. So it
Yeah.
it kind of went through my whole career. And when I was invited to retire from my pharmaceutical job at the age of 60, I was like, okay, so what's next? I mean, I'm certainly not ready to retire. And I actually was inspired at an event with Laura Langmeyer and Kevin Harrington. Kevin Harrington invented the infomercial. He's one of the original sharks on Shark Tank. He put Ginsu knives on the map,
Sure.
you know,
Yeah.
and so he owns a company called As Seen on TV.
I've seen that. Yeah.
Okay, that's a brand. That's
Yeah.
not just a tag they put on a label. That's his brand. He gets presented 20,000 items a year, and he picks 20 to 30 to put his brand on. So somebody asked him, how do you sort through all of that and pick the ones that you put your brand on?
Yeah.
And his answer was so ridiculously simple. It was like, if I see something that fills a need, I feel compelled to bring it to the marketplace. At which point, it was like a light bulb went on over my head. I swear everybody in the room could see it. I thought of something my father had created 23 years earlier. Now, again, my father, the engineer, always problem solving. When he was 70, he saw a lot of his friends losing their spouses. The one that was left was thrown into total chaos. The husband had never run the washing machine. The wife had never written a check. So he set out to write an owner's manual for your house. Well,
That's
did.
super handy. Why don't we get owner's manuals with our
Yeah, we have an
houses?
owner's
Like,
manual for your car, and there's a
right.
lot more things that can go wrong in the house, right?
And
So
if I had an owner's manual for the house I live in, I might have been able to use the fireplace that I have downstairs for the last 3 years that I've lived here. But I don't know how to work a gas fireplace. I grew up with a wood fireplace. I have no idea how to use it.
there you go. So, but he as an engineer, it was written like an engineer. It looked like something an engineer had put together, and he had no idea how to market it. So it sat on a shelf for 23 years. And
Oh
as
my
I
gosh.
sat in that room listening to Kevin Harrington, I said, we need this now. Baby boomers are taking care of their aging parents. We're also facing our own mortality. Our children are growing up and moving out on their own, and they have no clue what they're doing when they buy a house or rent an apartment, or they're calling us every other minute. How do we do this? Or what this just happened, and you're not close by, so you can't like run over there and fix it for them. So I said, I need to update this. So that set me on the journey of becoming the crisis planner. And
Wow.
and it transcends through everything, because literally, I mean, what have we been going through in this last year? We've had 4 simultaneous crises, if you think
True.
about it.
Yeah.
And it's like nobody in the world would have thought that the world would come to a screeching halt like it has, and how it's affected our businesses and how it's affected our lives and our livelihood and our health and our our way that we perceive each other. So this timing right now, it's like we need to control what you can control, because it
Mm.
feels like everything is spinning out of control, Miss Spin Frogs.
But you're so right. Like, there's a saying that's something like, give me the wisdom to or give me the power to control the things I can control, the wisdom to know that I can't control everything, and something to be able
Yes,
to determine the difference.
right. Because
Something like that is how it goes,
well,
and it's a
and
great quote.
it's from AA, and they say
Oh,
that every time. I
oh,
mean, it's like because there's things you can't control. So, I mean, I've always been one of these people. I divide worry into 2 categories: the things you can control and things you can't. Well, if you can't control it, why worry about it? Because there's nothing you can do about it. And if you
amen.
can control it, then get off your butt and do something about it. you know? So,
Yes.
and then you don't worry, because that's my whole thing. Get off the merry-go-round. Worry creates stress, which creates all kinds of negative stuff in your life, across your health, well, your livelihood, your business, your personal relationships. Stress is like the killer. So I I I interviewed actually Dr. McCaffrey on my show a couple of weeks ago, and he's one of these doctors that is thinks out of the box. He's not. He does both traditional and holistic medicine. But I said, what is the number one thing we can do to stay healthy during the pandemic? And his answer was turn off the TV,
Oh my God.
because
So true.
fear is feeding this frenzy of illness and despair and depression, and
Yeah.
it's just because it's creating so much stress in our lives.
It
And I
really is. I mean, and we can look at other countries like Mexico and what's happened there, and they haven't had nearly the outbreak that the United States has had, but they have like just as many people there in a smaller area. So how have they been able to control that outbreak? All of their media around it is positive. It's uplifting.
Mhm.
It's don't worry. If you get sick, we've got you. Like, it's amazing. And you know better than I do because you were there.
Yes, I did go to Acapulco in October, and you know, it just, even the subtlety of language. In
Yeah.
the United States, they call it social distancing. Oh,
Mm.
what a negative term that is. That actually makes my skin crawl when I hear that term, because it's like it's separating us. It's creating a chasm between us. In Mexico, and I've been calling it this forever, they call it sana distance. Sana distance means healthy distance. So you're respecting others by maintaining that healthy distance. It's not a negative thing. It's a very positive way of looking at it.
I like
And
it. I had a friend when I was in college who was from Ireland who would call it his personal sparse, his personal space. He was
yeah,
from Ireland, so I can't do an Irish accent like he can, but it was his personal space.
well,
His personal
and
space
when you
bubble.
can think about it, the Latin American countries are much more comfortable and much closer personal space. So for them to do this healthy distance, it it, it needed to be presented in a positive way because people wouldn't have done it otherwise.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that's one of the things that our country is having a hard time with is because we're used to, I mean, especially in major metropolitan areas like New York City, we're used to being sardined in and being able to have that physical contact with people.
I missed hugs.
Oh yeah, I miss hugs too. I mean, I would go to a networking event with 30 people and half of them at least would be friends of mine. So I'd walk in and get 15 hugs. Like
Exactly.
15 hugs in an hour, let alone a day. Like to go days with the hugs from my husband as much as I love my husband. Like it's one. It's one hug.
I know, but so what we've been going through is actually highlighted how unprepared we were
Oh
for a
yes.
disaster. And, so what I have is a bunch of tools and resources that people can utilize to, first of all, identify the plans they already have in place, because they might be surprised how much they actually do know. And I think that's when they start doing the inventory, because there's like 70 items in this book that are detailed. And oh yeah, I got that. I got that. I got that. Oh, here's a gaping hole. This I need, So once you identify what you have, then you can figure out what you're missing and fill those blanks in. Then you organize it in a system that you can find everything and your family can find it when they need it, because you don't want to be sending your family on a scavenger hunt without a list.
Thank God. I know,
you know
right? That
so
sounds
if you
terrible.
put everything in one place, you have all the numbers written down, the account numbers, the contact numbers, everything written down, your passwords. I mean, I worked with a gentleman who his wife died unexpectedly at the age of 35, and she handled all the finances. So, and she did everything online. He didn't have the password to the computer, didn't know what bank they used, and had no idea what bills to be paid because they didn't get physical bills. And all he could do was cry. And I literally had to get somebody to help him get into the computer and reconstruct everything so that he could actually function. But, that's the kind of thing that can happen, and you think of it as happening to an older person, but it can happen to anybody at any time.
Yeah, I mean, we're not guaranteed this life, right? We're just borrowing time every day that we're here and thankful for the time that we have, but that's all it is. It's just borrowed time.
Mhm.
When our number's up, our number's up. We don't know when that's
Exactly.
going to be. So,
So
yeah.
now you have it organized, you put everything together, and then the key is the communication. Who needs to know and what do they need to know? They don't need to know everything. They just need to know where to find it. And a lot of like my parents' generation who were, you know, the Depression generation, they're that generation's a little afraid to share information, because my kid's going to steal it, or God knows they're going to throw me out in the street or something. But if your children know where to find it, and probably the most important thing they need to know is if you have a long-term care policy, because the saddest story I ever ran into was a family had a father who had Alzheimer's. They did home care as long as they could, spent all his money, and finally he had to move into a nursing home. And in order to do that, they had to sign the house over to Medicaid to pay for the $15,000 a month bill in the nursing home. And
No, that's terrible.
so now he dies 3-4 months later, because he really was that at the end of his life. And that's when Medicaid makes you sell the house. They don't make you sell the house until the person is dead, because they feel that the psychology behind it is that person may get better and then they need someplace to live. So they don't make it. So they're cleaning out the house. And that's when they found it in the bottom drawer in his bureau, a long-term care policy that not only would have saved the house, but would have paid for all his home care.
Oh man.
And there was nothing they could do retroactively. So there's certain things your family does need to know. But mostly they just need to know that you have it all together and that they can find it. And the same thing goes for your business.
I was just going to ask, so does this have a ripple effect into our business, especially since most of our listeners are females, they might be single mothers. How does this affect them? Like, what are things they need to be thinking about?
Well, and when you think about your business, okay, what protections do you have in place for your business? What legal protections have you set up? Legal entities? Do you have your business insurance? Do you have errors and omissions insurance? Have you trademarked and protected your intellectual property? Copyrighted your material? If you have a small business with a couple of employees, each employee is really important in that business. What happens if they suddenly get sick, or they suddenly have to become a caregiver to their spouse or a parent, and they can't do the job that they've always done, and you're depending on them? So you need to have contingency plans in place for all of those things. What is your plan B? Because plan B and sometimes plan C are essential in business, because as we know, things happen.
Is there a checklist that we should try and look for? Because I am with my audience here. Like, while I do have my LLC in place and I do have my insurance in place, there's this, okay, but I'm missing something, worry now that exists. And
Yeah.
what is the something that I might be missing to help protect against that? Does a checklist exist? Have you written one?
I actually haven't written a business checklist, but I can do that very easily. I think that would be a really good thing to do, because my husband had worked for an electronics company at one time, and it was a small electronics firm. They had maybe 15 employees. And what they did is they ground optical lenses to measure the chemical composition of substances. And the woman that ground the lenses had been with the company since its founding. And she was 85 years old. And the only person that could grind, because her vision and her ability to grind these lenses was so incredible. And she's 85 years old. And suddenly they realize, oh my God, what would ever happen to us if something happened to Louise? The whole business would be gone. Because without the person to do those lenses, there is nothing.
Right. Oh gosh.
Fortunately, they did bring somebody in. And over the course of 2 years, Louise trained her to be able to grind the lenses. And Louise passed away at the age of 87 and a half.
That was a close call.
Very close call. And and when you look at your businesses, you have to look at who are the critical personnel. And there's insurance policies for key personnel. There's, you have to, when you start a business, you have to start with your exit plan in mind. One of my dear friends started a business probably about 10 years ago. It was a paper shredding business. She started out with one truck. And when she started her business, she had a 6-year plan that she was going to build this up, and in 6 years, she was going to sell it. Well, by the time 5 years was, she had 12 trucks and sold her business for millions, because she planned from the very beginning that my objective is to sell this business. So
but Linda, what about the people who fall into the role that they have? They find a passion of theirs and they start doing it as a side hustle, and before they know it, it's replaced their full-time income and they're able to walk away from their house. They didn't really get into business on purpose. They kind of got there accidentally.
Well, I call those the accidental entrepreneurs, and many of us are accidental entrepreneurs, because we find our passion. And, I mean, at this point, I'm 69 years old and I just started a second business. So it's like, I don't even know. I mean, I, I but I have an exit plan in place for that second business already. That at some point somebody is going to buy this business when I build it to the point where I'm building it. So it's thinking bigger. I think too many of us think small.
Ooh, that's such a good point.
I mean, if you
Mm.
think that, oh, I'm getting by, I'm making enough money, I'm okay, but what value are you bringing to the world? How are you impacting the people that you're serving? How can you serve more people? And I think planning for growth and then planning for exit are things that a lot of entrepreneurs don't handle well. And what happens a lot of times is they get involved in a partnership that doesn't work out. And I know you shared your journey with me on that issue.
There's I'm going to say there's probably a few people out there who've experienced
Yes.
that pain, I'm sure.
And that's where when you do join forces with somebody, you have to have your legal documents in place on how you would sever that relationship should it go awry. Who's responsible for what? What's the financial disbursement going to be? So that one person doesn't end up taking all the marbles and you did all the work. It's, I've seen the story too many times and it's not fun when it happens.
So if we've already started because we're an accidental entrepreneur and we're hearing this show now, the first thing we need to do is not think about what we should have done, but think about what we can do next. Like, yes, it would have been good to have key personnel policies and X, Y, and Z insurance or whatever in place before you started. But okay, you know now that you have to have it. So let's start taking the steps to make them
Right.
available now, because the next best time to plant the seed is today.
Is today. You are so right. And that it's never too late to create a plan, if you think about it. No matter how deep the manure is that you're in, I'm always looking for the pony, because with that much shit, there's got to be a pony around here someplace.
As my good friend Jamile says, we all have to go through the caca to get to the good stuff. And the caca helps us to grow those nutritious fruits and vegetables. So good things can come out of manure.
Right. And and some of us can learn from other people's mistakes. Some of us learn from our own mistakes, and some of us never learn. So even if you're learning from your own mistakes, it's like, okay, I can do it differently this time. I can change this. I can add this. The whole idea of being in business for yourself is, how do you protect your business and your livelihood? And, we just had this major snowstorm up here in the Northeast, which typically before the pandemic would have caused pandemonium because all these businesses would have been shut down. With the pandemic, so many people are working from home, they got through it without a blink because they didn't have to go anywhere in the storm. But what if you have a retail business? What if you have a business that depends on foot traffic? Okay, you have to have a plan in place to remove the snow or to get your data, your internet back up and running if there's a power failure. And that goes the same thing when there's a hurricane or a tornado, or, how do you pick up the pieces? And you start by picking up one piece at a time.
That's such a good point, because we have had this wonderful opportunity in this year where we've learned to put certain protocols in place, systems in place to allow so many people to work remotely, securely, because a lot of these organizations, I mean, there's security protocols that they need to follow from an infrastructure standpoint,
Right,
to help protect identities in some cases, credit card information, certainly, so that they don't run into a data breach situation, right? So they've had, from an
right.
IT perspective, have to put all those protocols in place, which is a godsend now for a lot of these organizations when they have a crisis and people don't get to come into the office. Well, that's okay. We've got that all in place. What about if I'm in the office and something happens? Like, I know here in North Carolina, we have ServPro, and I know ServPro is pretty national organization, and they do like an assessment.
Restoration. Yeah, they do
Yeah.
restoration, like if you have a flood in your office or,
But they do like an assessment too, that is kind of like a map of like where all your major shutoffs are,
mhm.
things like that. And I think they do that for free. So if you don't know where your business water shutoff is, or where your electrical shutoff is, or that kind of stuff, where your fuse box is, if a fuse blows,
Well, and
that
that
is
that is
useful.
key also because you can minimize the damage if you know how to turn the water off when you have water flooding. I just recently had a pinhole leak in my main water line in my office. Okay. I come downstairs and the carpet is like wet. And I'm like, why is the carpet wet? So I looked, okay, it's not the sewer line, it's not the heating system. Then I opened the closet door for where my main water line comes in, and it's spritzing this little pinhole spritz. And I'm like, okay, this is a problem, but I wasn't inches in water. I was just, the carpet was wet.
You were a
Or,
little squishy.
yeah, it was a little squishy. So the importance of that is you've got to dry that out as quickly as possible because otherwise you end up with a mold situation, which is far worse.
Oh gosh, yes, exactly.
So I was able to turn the water off. I have a home warranty. So I was able to call them and they sent a plumber who fixed my problem. And then I borrowed a dehumidifier and I ran some fans for 3 days and everything dried out. In the meantime, I had all kinds of cardboard and boxes on the floor. And fortunately, the water hadn't gotten to that part of the office. So I put everything up on the counters. I didn't lose anything because I was able to react quickly.
Oh my goodness. Thank goodness for that.
So
So
I
that's
didn't.
the benefit of having a plan in
Mhm.
advance for when things go awry. You're able
Yes.
to protect yourself. So Linda, now's a good time for me to ask, how do we get a hold of that book that gives us the like checklist of things that we need to have?
Well, you can the home planning system. You can get that at the crisisplannerhome.com, and it comes with a watertight box where you can put all your documents. Which, if you have your business, you'll put all your business documents in there, your personal documents, and file folders in there. It comes with water leak detectors, which are probably the best thing that I've ever seen. They actually set off a 95 decibel alarm when a 16th of an inch of water is detected, and you put them in all the critical places where there's water lines. So, like, I have one because my office is in my home. I have one by my washing machine and my boiler and my hot water heater and the AC drip pan in the attic, which that's the one that got me because I had a plugged drain and I had a waterfall in my closet. So now with these water leak detectors, it'll alert you when a small amount of water is noticed. It comes with circuit breaker labels. It comes with a password book that you can record all your passwords written down. Because what happens if suddenly you have no power and you have no internet and you have to move it someplace else and you can't access your internet, you have to use somebody else's computer and you don't have the keeper program on that computer, and so you need to have things written down that you can find things.
Except
uh
I always forget what my passwords are, so I'm changing them every other month.
I used to have sticky notes all over my computer screen, and now I just have everything in this little passport.
Well, that's a handy little device.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it also comes with all kinds of really cool stuff, like a camera cover for your computer so that you can cover the camera when you're not using it. It comes
Super
with,
important.
yeah, because you don't know, somebody could be accessing your camera and
True.
spying on you. You
True.
know, yeah, we're all like, I'm like really kind of paranoid about those things because I don't trust all the internet stuff that much. And it comes with 5 volumes of books that you can put all of your information in. And one is just telling you what to do when something goes wrong, what all the systems are. And it applies as much to your, your building if you're in an office or your home. I mean, you could utilize it in either location, and you just kind of go through it, and you start with what do you start? You start with what you have, and then you fill in what you're missing, and then you
Absolutely.
organize it, and then you communicate it. So 4 simple steps. And
Fantastic. Thank you, Linda. So I have a question for you
yes,
because you're always prepared. So what's been the biggest challenge that you've had to face in your life or in your
um,
business?
let's see, the biggest challenge, well, I would have to say was losing my husband when he passed away 4 years ago.
Mm,
And although because I'm the crisis planner, we had everything organized and planned down to the last detail of his funeral, that I was able to celebrate his life. And instead of being in a panic and just being um, lost.
mm,
And that is the greatest gift that you can give to your family,
mhm.
is to really give them the gift of being prepared for when something goes wrong, because it happens, and it can happen to anyone at any time.
Yeah.
And uh, you don't want to be that lost soul that is like totally, uh, you don't know what to do. I knew what to do, and I moved forward, and it,
Give you
it
the ability to grieve and move on with your life.
right. I was able to
Mm,
grieve because I wasn't panicked.
mhm.
I was able to grieve and also celebrate the years we had together.
Mm,
So it was, that was probably my biggest challenge. And it certainly, there are moments when it still hits you. You have these soog moments, sudden outburst of grief. I look at a can of sardines and I start crying because he loved sardines. And it's like, how stupid is that? But, it's like, okay, but you need to embrace those moments as well.
mm.
I, when I'm having one of those down moments, I allow myself to feel all the emotion of being down.
Mm.
And then a half hour later, I said, okay, what are you going to do about it? And
That
go
is
for
such a good question. What are you going to do about it?
it.
Because
So,
it forces you to stop feeling sorry for yourself and stop being in the story that's playing on repeat in your head that's making you feel down. It
right,
forces you to like snap out of that
right,
and move into another activity or action.
exactly.
Mhm.
But when you're like in that moment, taste the salt of your tears, feel that everything that you want to feel it all. It's okay. And
Mm,
then release it, because it's so cathartic to be able to have that feeling and let it go.
mhm.
And and then you go forward. And I mean, business owners have this happen to them all the time. They run into roadblocks, they run into, you know oh, I'm expecting this big order, and then it doesn't come in. And you
I
geared
had
up.
that happen on a trade show floor once. I was doing trade show management for an organization here locally and for an international show out in Las Vegas, because that's where a lot of the international shows take place. And one of my clients had one of those big hanging signs. Well, the sign didn't show up. The sign shipped a whole week before the rest of the display. Sign wasn't there. We don't know where it was. So we had to not only remake it, but reship it like 2 days before the show was supposed to open and get it hung after the rest of the booth was already built, which doesn't happen. The sign goes up first, then
Right,
the booth,
right.
because they can't get the lifts in to get the sign up. But we didn't have the time because we're East Coast, Las Vegas is West Coast. We didn't have the time to wait to install the rest of the display. We had to install the display and then we had to get them to raise the sign after. And that was
I think
something.
that is the most important, because, okay, something went wrong. What are you going to do about it? How do you fix it? What is the best course of action to fix it? Instead of wallowing in the fact that it went wrong, how can I make this better? How can I get through this and with the best possible outcome? And you know, as entrepreneurs, we are resilient that way
Mhm.
because, you know, most of us are one person bands. You know, it's like, okay, that didn't work. How can I try that differently? Or, you know, the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result.
Yes.
So, uh, you know, as an entrepreneur, you have to use your creative and imagination to get through some of the stuff that comes your way.
Somebody said once, we can't think our way out of the challenge that we find ourselves in the same brain that put us in the challenge to begin with.
Mhm.
So, how do we change our brain so that we can find that creative solution? Because creativity doesn't live in the same space as sorrow and depression and self doubt.
And I think that's where having mentors and mastermind partners, people that maybe are different businesses, different backgrounds, when you have a problem, being able to go to someone and say, I don't know how to fix this. And it's like they look at a problem from a completely different perspective. And it's like, oh, did you try this? And you're like, oh my God, that never occurred to me. And it's one of the reasons why I've created the science labs now, because I want to teach children how to use their imagination and creativity and become those problem solvers, because schools are not teaching them that. And a child looks at things in such a pure way that they will look at a problem and say, oh, why don't we do it this way? And you'll say, I never thought of it. Because we are so entrenched in our system of thought process that we can't see it. You think about it, the greatest mathematical minds are usually 12 years old or younger.
Interesting.
Theoretical physicists peak at 14
Wow.
because they're not bound by all the baggage that we all carry.
Mm.
So if you could release the baggage, and the way I do it is I have a mastermind group that I meet with every Tuesday. I have mentors that I know and trust, that I bounce things off of. And, you know, is this a good idea, or is this, you know, is this going to work? And you get their perspective, and then you can create the solution that you need. So for me, that's probably the biggest, you know, key, and one of the greatest gifts to me was Women's Prosperity Network,
Yeah.
because that gives me access to masterminds and mentorship and just coaching and everything that I need as a solopreneur.
And
Because
amazing opportunities for speaking engagements and
yes,
connections and
and
relationships.
connections.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because the
Sure.
people that I have met through Women's Prosperity Network, like you, and, you know, and so many amazing women doing amazing things.
Yes.
And we tend to, as women, belittle our accomplishments. We don't tend to celebrate the things that we're doing right. And I think Women's Prosperity Network encourages us all to celebrate not only our lives, but our businesses, our accomplishments, and really love ourselves and love what we're doing. If you're not in love with what you're doing, why are you doing it?
Yeah. I always say stop doing it immediately. Go find something that you can love.
Exactly.
Yeah, because
Exactly.
it's this life is too short. And while we do get to live the life every day, we get 365 days in every year that we're alive to live life to its fullest. Why spend it in misery doing something that you hate and don't love? Like there's just no point to that.
And then the other lesson is the past is in the past. You can't
Mm.
change the past. You only have control of what's happening right now, this minute, this day. If you release the past, release any of the baggage and the things that have gone wrong in your life in the past, if you let those go,
Yeah.
it frees you to truly live. And that's the joy of what I do. And every day I get to, it's a magical day, you know?
Absolutely, because what you're doing is you're freeing our worry, because we can walk around here. Like, I talk to my parents all the time. They're down in Florida. They worry about hurricanes all the time. And it's like, you could worry about a hurricane every day of your life, or you could prepare and have a plan for when a hurricane comes and then never worry about one again. Because
Right.
you know what's you know what you're gonna do when it happens.
Right.
Like, and then it just frees you so much from that worry. So having that preparedness plan is so important.
And
And
I
what
think
was that?
the other thing that people forget is if you lose things, they're only things.
Yes.
Your priority always is to protect lives. And your life has value. So I don't care how much you love your home, how much you love your car. If they tell you to evacuate, evacuate. Because we can't get you back if you don't
Mhm.
make it through the storm. And a friend of mine lost her aunt during not Michael. Was it Michael? Was that the one that hit
North Carolina.
Panhandle? The Panhandle.
Uh,
What was
oh
that?
no, that was Katrina, I think.
No. It was just recent.
Oh,
And it hit this
I forget its
small
name.
town and in the Panhandle. And this 85-year-old woman said, I've been through all these hurricanes. I don't need to go anywhere. I'm staying in my house. And they found her body 3 weeks later
Mm,
because the house collapsed.
mm.
So it's not, yeah, I think it was Hurricane Michael, quite honestly.
Oh, it's not worth staying for. Don't
So
stay.
things are things can be replaced
Yeah.
and things need to be released. Sometimes we're carrying around so much crap that it's like, oh, I need to let this stuff go.
Sometimes it's a blessing when something comes
Yeah.
and takes that stuff away.
Yes, exactly.
Then you don't have the burden of going through it and having all those memories and then like trying to release it when you really just like, oh, but I just had this beautiful memory of this thing and I don't want to let it go. If you haven't looked at it or touched it in 6 months, let it go without looking at it. I promise you'll be okay.
In most cases, yeah.
So if you had one tip to give our listeners today, and I know we're coming up on our time, if there was one tip you could give everybody that you wish that you could give your younger self, what would that tip be?
Okay, my tip for my younger self: find joy in every day, be prepared for the unexpected, and celebrate.
Mm, I love it. Find joy in every day. And I love the find joy in every day and celebrate because they kind of go together. If you're finding the joy in every day, then you're finding the little things to celebrate. And that helps your mind to start focusing on those positive places where you can be creative in a
Mhm.
crisis. Because if your mind is used to finding the creativity and the joy and the good things, then even in a crisis, your mind will automatically go to that resourceful place.
I mean, anybody who's ever been through a really bad hurricane where the winds are blowing and there's flooding and the trees are coming down, and the day after the storm when the sun comes out and you're standing in the sunshine and you feel it on your face, and it's telling you that everything is going to be okay,
Mm,
and celebrate that, really, because everything will be okay. We've lost so many people during the pandemic, but we've also welcomed so many new babies.
mhm.
um it's like friends on Facebook, oh, an aunt passed away and then a cousin has a child. And so it's that's the yin and yang of life. It's that circle of life that is so, you know, we don't know when our train is getting to the final station. So take every day and make something special out of it. And that's really the way I look at my life. So I try to make every day special.
It's so good, Linda. Thank you so much. What again is the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Well, they can go to my website, lindafostek.com, and that's FOSTEK.com. And or you can go to Linda Fostek and email me at lindafostek@thecurrier.com. crisisplanner.com.
Very good. Thank you so much, Linda, for taking the time today. To our listening audience, let us know that this information has served you today. Leave a comment below, subscribe, share this video with your friends. Do something to let us know that this material is exactly what you needed to hear to help you be better prepared in a crisis. I'm Terry with Spin Frogs, your chief idea catcher over here at Spin Frogs, and thank you for tuning in to another terrific tips.